Good morning. Hope everyone had some good coffee and is amped to talk about something that is super exciting to me. I lead our direct-to-consumer business at Stanley. I've been there a little bit over 2 years, so probably the wildest ride of my life, and it's been an amazing opportunity. As I was thinking about this talk, right, like I've obviously been an attendee at conferences, and sometimes I take things away and think about them in different ways, and I think that's really where I wanted to ground this conversation, right? It's really how we thought about things, and hopefully that leaves you inspired to think about things a bit differently in your business, right? And so there'll be a lot of talk on emotions. We'll get into that. Also just how are we kind of stair-stepped, because I think a lot of, even during this conference, a lot of the first question is like, how did it happen? Where's the magic? And I think there's a lot of people, right, who have assumed like it's magic, it just happened, and there was a viral moment and exploded, and some can say it was a viral moment, but we've really built this momentum over 4 years, right, and it's been strategic. There's been decisions we've made, hard decisions, a lot of right decisions, and as we kind of enter into this next era of Stanley, there'll be another more challenges and more excitement, and I think that is what drives me and my team and the company every day. I think this Stanley that you've seen, over the last, could be 100 years, we'll get into that, and the heritage has been exciting and innovative. But if I look forward to the next 1, 2, 5 years, I think where Stanley is going is a whole nother stratosphere, which really excites me. Almost forgot the clicker, guys. All right, more than a cup, right? So what people see, a lot of people have been like, oh, my daughter, my son, my kid has one, I have 7. Somebody said 40. I don't know who that, oh, yeah, 40. It's weird. I mean, there's people use cups for different parts of their lifestyle, right? And I think if we look at where we started, Stanley 1913, right? Some people have been like, what's the 1913? That's the year we were founded. Like, Stanley is not a 5-year-old or 4-year-old company. It is over 100 years, right? And it really started, a lot of people have, when I'm talking to them, whether it's in interviews or people I work with, like their connection to Stanley started a long time ago. It was grandparent, right? A parent going to work. And for Stanley, we really fueled that, we fueled the workers of America. There's some great, photos and things of World Trade Center, the people who built it, having Stanleys, right? And so there's that sentimental nostalgia that people already had with the brand. And then going forward after that, right, was really the next chapter or era. We refer to these as eras, right? And eras doesn't necessarily mean they start and they stop. People are still using Stanley for work today as we speak, right, on job sites. And we've just had kind of these different outward-facing eras. So from 1965 till about 2020, we fueled the outdoors, right? We became a very much focused on outdoor brand. Before this, and the important time in American history that really occurred during this is like there was a fixation on work, right? And people finally started to be like, they need to relax, they need to get outdoors. And that was really where Stanley showed up for that next 35 years, right? It was an outdoor company. Why this is so important, both of these first eras, is the quality and innovation aspect. So there's a lot of people here, different marketers, different people from brand. I am so privileged because the quality of our products is untouchable by anybody, right? And it's because it was built back then to last, right? And I tell people this story, and it's my second day at Stanley in the office, right? And I was sitting there, as you do on anything, looking at all the data, and I heard this huge thump, like massive thump. I actually thought a car hit our building, right? And I was like, but the weird thing was that the only person that reacted to that was me. Everyone else was working like normal, which made me question my sanity, right? I was like, did I imagine this big thump? Again, another thump. Nobody reacts, right? Everyone's sitting and working as normal. I'm like, there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with my new teammates. I thought it was me. I decided to go and investigate, right? I'm like, I have to figure out what this thump is. Why is everybody acting normal? We have this room, right? Imagine let's just call it a 15-foot by 15-foot room in our building. Perspex wall, right? Like, so you can see through the window. There is a gentleman standing on a table this high, and he's probably like 6 feet, 6'2", And he is taking the quencher and hurling this thing down on a concrete floor, right? And then he's taking a photo and hurling it. I'm like, oh my goodness. You know, learning about Stanley, it's like everybody's like quality, quality. I'm like, these people take this quality seriously. And that was a huge part of our success, right? Because if you've ever held a Stanley, and one of my favorite things to do is like if you've never held a Stanley or I've gifted somebody, when they first touch it, they're like, wow, like this feels different, right? And that's because, we've built them for life. We have lifetime warranties on our products, but it's also like built for your life, right, in every aspect. So we'll talk more about that. So fast forwarding to more modern era, I guess we could call that, Stanley for hydration. I forgot that there was music there. We're gonna skip that music. I'll talk over it. Great video though. I'll go back and play it later maybe, if we have time. But Stanley for hydration, right? And this is probably the Stanley that, definitely if you're in certain age range, right? Like the college and even why people get excited, most of the questions comes during this era. And this was really hydration, right? And hydration focused, we had trendy products. And this is where people believe, oh, magic, boom, all of this interesting stuff. And I think if we think about our direct-to-consumer business, right, which is we really believe that's our most intimate connection with our consumer. Obviously, you can find us in different retailers, and we have a round table talking about that here in a bit. But really, the direct-to-consumer business 2 years ago, a bit more than 2 years ago, was really used as a marketplace, if you will, right? You came, you bought the product, and you leave. Because our D2C business is 4 years old, 4.5 years old, right? We're very, very young. I guess if you consider some of the other direct-to-consumer businesses in our space. And really the first piece was this, like how did we come, we have to start with one simple question. Why D2C, right? And I think when people see this, and I know we have a lot of business-minded folks in here, you're gonna be like, oh, that's easy. More margin, access to data, customer relationship. But that is not the why D2C we were thinking about, right? It was really why shop D2C. And when we talk about emotions, connection, right, which is huge, like Stanley, it's emotion, innovation, connection, right? Three big pillars for us. It's like, why would someone shop at D2C? So my first 2 weeks was going to everybody at Stanley and saying, why do you shop on our D2C? And the answers were not good enough, right? It was, oh, because I work here. I want to support the brand directly. And that's not a good enough reason, right? Where we have really strong retail partners. Like, we needed something different, right? And that becomes like, why would you even visit our D2C? Why would you visit Stanley1913.com in the first place, right? You might be in a store looking us up. You might have, clicked an influencer post. But really, why do you visit? And this is where it was a really pivotal point for us, right? We knew we had to have these pillars of what our direct-to-consumer business stood for and really take those advantages, right? Because it is true, right? The relationship with the consumer and all of those kind of the things you can Google, right? If you're like, why should I have a D2C business? Those things, those are all true. But it was really taking it to the next level, right? And it was about exclusive access, right? We knew that, Stanley has been really at the forefront of culture, right? There was a culture roundtable yesterday, which was really interesting to listen in on. And people were like, what is culture? Which part of culture? Are you behind culture, in front of culture? For Stanley, we've been really, really excited to work with the partners we are to stay on that forefront of culture. But of course, culture is changing every minute or every day, right? Without our direct-to-consumer business, there is no way we could have pivoted and made the decisions and kind of launched our brand into this new era. The second one's brand, not just a storefront, right? Stanley is now heading into a space where we're a premium lifestyle brand, right? You think about that in your head, you start to think about Nikes of the world, right? Adidas, there's a lot of like Lululemon has done a phenomenal job in that space. And you start to think it's not just a storefront, right? Like, how do we show up on this site as a brand? How do we make people feel emotions and that connection? And then the last one is community, right? And community really is everything. If you think about, where Stanley really, started, and I think there's been a lot of questions about like, what was that pivotal point, right? And there's been a few pivotal points. The first one was really, there was people who wanted the product, and there was a few people in Stanley who took that risk, right? And through color and material, served a new audience, and it's taken off ever since, right? So community has been extremely important. So if we talk about cultivating exclusivity, I think this is an important one. Exclusivity does not just happen if you just throw something on and be like, buy this in 5 minutes, or this is a limited edition, right? You have to really cultivate it. You have to really make things that are special. And we've been really, really precise and strategic about just what sort of products we bring to Stanley and to our direct-to-consumer business, right? So for those of you who have followed our journey over the last 2 years, we have really limited edition, right? And we call it color, material, finish. So if you look at these, you'll see like there is elevated finishes. We have teams, right, that are working on the finishing of these cups. This is not just a simple paint job. You'll see things that react to light, and then how we connected it to culture, right? These particular ones that are up here. I heard there's a laser. Should we try it out? All right, it works. So this one, right, chocolate gold was our Valentine's Day. We made sure that was in a box that looked like a box of chocolates, very relevant. Midnight Glitz, Black Friday, and then Pink Parade. So Pink Parade was a very interesting one for us. I think transparency is always good and something we stand at. We missed the pink train, right? You remember a Barbie movie and kind of all the explosion on pink, and every single thing we post is like, pink please, pink please. And the thing is, like, we could have just launched an ordinary pink and be like, throw it out there, make the most of the moment. But it was a really important decision for us to, like, if we're going to do pink, we're going to freaking do it right? And we're going to make a big thing of it. So we launched that on Black Friday, right? So instead of, discounts, you talk about discounts, we're not a discount brand. Stanley hadn't really participated in the direct-to-consumer on a Black Friday. So this was really important. The brief for this product was make a product that people will hold and love and cherish, right? And like really want. Like this is not just about like, make me a pink product. So it's very important. And then we get, the more exciting, that's my favorite cup, the Halloween web glow version that glows in the dark, matte black and shiny black mixed. So we've been really good about that. What that also led to was amazing partnerships, right? Lainey Wilson, Olivia Rodrigo, Love Shack Fancy. We did work with Barbie. Tyler, Messi, and then as of last week actually, Post Malone is coming on June 16th, which is really exciting for us. And I think if you see the kind of the thread, you will notice that there's an emotional connection to each of these things that we've brought out, right? More than just a cup, that emotion. There's innovation going on. And then just how we connect to culture, right? And how we're at the forefront. You see sports, fashion, music is really at that forefront, and we've had some really amazing partners, and I think that's not going to stop, right? So it's things that I can't talk about, but the next 2 years for me are even more exciting. I think we're going to have some really amazing partnerships, innovative products, right? We have a wearable water at the moment. I don't know if people have seen the Cross bottle. It's one of the first double wall insulated stainless steel bottles of that shape, right? So we have a whole innovation team. So we're not just kind of innovating on the digital side or on the color side, but the actual products themselves will match different lifestyles. I'm going to go through this one really quickly and happy to connect afterwards, just to save time. There is a behavioral triangle that happens, right? And I've experienced this throughout my career. I've been in e-commerce now for 20 years, which sounds really weird because I'm aging myself, even though I don't think it's been 20 years. It's been fun. There's a behavioral triangle, right? Especially with products that drop with high heat. So things like Liquid Death, right? The keg was something that went out really quickly and sold out. But there's this exclusivity, scarcity, and urgency triangle. And I think what's important to think about is like there's different companies that are using different strategies somewhere on this scale, right? Which I'll get into in a moment. But an exclusive product is more than meeting a need, right? It fulfills aspiration, emotion, right? I'm going to keep beating it in emotion, emotion, emotion. And this was really important for us, not only to make sure that you could, get in a premium product, but really how do people feel about it? How do they react? And then scarcity. This is an interesting one, right? Because there is companies out there who purposely make their products scarce. Stanley has never engineered scarcity. We've been in a spot where through urgency, right, and urgency turning attention into conversion, but we've been in this very interesting spot, which was represented by this green dot, right, this exclusivity and urgency, where the drive and the demand have been so much that we ultimately sell out in 5 minutes, right? And if you read through some of the comments, people would be like, oh my gosh, they did this on purpose. We did not. This has been a form of it, right? And you have different companies doing different things. If you think about on that scarcity, right? You think about things like Rolex and the watches, or you think about, if we were in the top triangle, like exclusivity, you think about Ferrari, right? And all of those things. So that triangle is very interesting, and you'll start to notice if you think about those 3 buckets and you see product drops in particular, either in sneaker industry or it's pretty much happening across the board. It's happening in water. I think that's a fascinating one, right? To dive deep into there and think like, what are people thinking? And when we go through, there's some mention of consumer journey or purchasing journey yesterday. We actually apply a different lens at Stanley. We have the normal consumer journey, like, oh, you're viewing this page and go like, but there is another layer on top of that, which is like, how are people feeling, right? An emotional consumer journey. And I feel like a lot of companies sometimes forget about that, right? We get so much in our heads that we don't realize that when somebody is shopping with us or on our site, they're feeling different things, right? Like nobody wants to go shop and be bored to death, right? You might if you're buying like a normal supply, but really, how are they feeling during that, right? We have a really important, when we launch collaborations or exclusive products, we have a tease phase, right? And the tease is very, very important for us because there's this magical thing that happens when you tease a product, or you'll see it even in, if you look at extra, extra, right, or like celebrity news, like there's always that gossip, right? And like there's almost like this thing that happens where curiosity turns into speculation. And that's a very interesting space when it's going on with Post Malone now. People are guessing what product it's going to be, how it's going to look. But what that curiosity and that kind of thing turns into conversation, that causes excitement, right? And we talked about word of mouth. Like, people are talking to each other and what they speculate. And there's some wicked smart people out there, I will admit. There's been people who have guessed a lot of what we're doing, and I'm like, that's great. That means we're hitting the right home runs, right? We're taking the right swings. And I think that part has been really important for us, just in how we tease, right? It's how we build our email lists and things like that, because we want people to know. Cultivating emotion, I'm going to show you a video. It's about 90 seconds long on something we did with Messi. I'll let it talk for itself.
Otro día caliente por delante, Rosario. Septiembre del 1993 será un mes caluroso. Sobre el sector izquierdo, Milanes se juega para el Colón, Messi para Milanes, izquierdo puede para Messi, viene primero, le pegó Messi.
He asked me if he could hold my hand, and I shyly said I wouldn't dream of it.
They brought me here for 2 weeks, training all the time under the supervision of the academy staff.
But then I felt his hand touch mine. Now I dream of it. How I dream of it all the time. All the time.
All right. So talking about emotion, we got to work with Messi, which doesn't happen every day, right? Arguably the best footballer that has ever lived. What people might not know, right, is in a way that collaboration was 30 years in the making. Right? And you're like, what are you talking about? Lost your mind. Messi has used Stanley since he was about 8 years old. He's about 37 now. Sorry, adding his age. You can Google it. He was a fan of the brand since he was young, right? Using it for mate. If you have not tried mate, I suggest expanding your horizon and trying it. There's different flavors. Definitely try it. But I think these are the sort of decisions we're making, right? Where we're not just going off to like, oh, this person is selling at concerts, we're gonna jump on that bandwagon. Let's go do that. We're really building these thoughtful connections, right? Not magic, but really strategic decisions on who we work with and who represents our brand and what we want to be. So very, very interesting one on Messi. This one I put was interesting, right? If you go through our comments, it's a surreal feeling, I think, for a lot of us, right? But when you see the excitement, right, or if you've seen any of the Christmas unboxing videos when people get Stanleys, they have such a response, right? And they're smiling and happy. And I think like this is probably, for me at least, the best part of the job, right? We're putting sustainable products out there that are made of recycled stainless steel that last for life, right? People are taking care of them and using them in their everyday life. And I think there's a lot of these comments. I don't know if you can read that, but I'll send it. We can talk about it later. But a lot of good feedback there. Almost out of time here. I'll rattle through this one. I think this is something important as a takeaway as well. This is what our Lainey Wilson asked, the second collaboration we did with her website. We were in Vogue magazine in a spread with Love Shack Fancy. And then the Barbie site. How many of you think that these things were done to sell the cup? Oh, nobody was brave enough to, right? I led the witness, which is good. None of this was to sell those cups, right? The Love Shack Fancy Vogue was actually long after we even launched the product. And then the question is why, right? These are places where new frontiers where we're going in, and you cannot inauthentically enter them, right? We talk about authenticity, which has been the key for us, right? Is authentic moments, so that showing up with arguably one of the hottest fashion brands in Love Shack Fancy, and they know their consumer extremely well, and being in Vogue opens up other doors for us, right? It allows us to work with Messi, right? It's important for our partnerships to evoke emotion, so that people are coming on there and enjoying the experience versus selling the cup. I'm going to skip this. Well, should I? I don't know. Stanley Club, our new loyalty program. It's not a discount program. Make that very clear. We wanted to launch a program that people felt good about, right? And you start to think about what does that actually mean. It's about exclusive access, right? For me, the hard part when things were selling out so quickly is we had people who have been fans of the brands for like a long time before that, right? Or have been with us since the beginning of the 4-year journey, and they weren't able to get things. So exclusive access, birthday gifts, live events, definitely something interesting to think about. It's at its infancy. I look forward to seeing how this is growing. And again, based on that community, right, I think that's important, because although the world is about acquisition in a lot of companies, the way that we think about Stanley is obviously acquisition is important. But I think retention for us is just as important, right? And people are using so many of our products for different ways, and this will be an important thing. 4 key learnings: tap into hearts and emotions, not wallets. It's very hard, right? I think that different people in the room have different KPIs. It's hard. It's easy to write, hard to put into action. And it's about being relevant, authentic, unique, and timely. Authenticity is not a strategy, it's a commitment. This is an interesting one, and the more you think about it, at first you might be like, what the hell is he talking about now? This guy's lost his mind. But the more you think about it, at certain decisions, you're going to come to you like, oh, we have to be authentic. That should be ingrained. You should always be authentic. The round table yesterday, somebody mentioned that brands get called out quicker than ever before, right? It's even happening with Duolingo right now, as of yesterday. Interesting story. But I think like you have to be authentic, because people will call you out. Like they will call you out today, right? Like long gone are the days when people didn't have a voice or they were manipulated or tricked. Like authenticity is a commitment. Talk through consumers, not to them. Critical, right? I think this is a quote that I read a while ago and that really stuck with me. If you can have consumers tell your story versus you telling them the story that they should believe about you, you're in, right? And that leads to nothing beats word of mouth, right? CPC, all the costs of paid media are going up. Word of mouth is the most powerful conversion tool that exists in the world. It is also one that you do not want to engineer, right? Like I said earlier, we have quality, right? The word of mouth was not because we try to incentivize people to go tell their friends or give them perks to go tell people to buy something. We let them do that, right? Like, and it's even for me, when I meet people who do not have a Stanley, I am excited for them because they're going to use a Stanley and they'll be like, wow, right? There's a new campaign that we have out. We were obviously more female consumer over the last 4 or 5 years. We got a lot of insights that partners, specifically husbands, were stealing their wives' quenchers at home, right? They won't do it in public. They'll do it in home. So we have a Get Your Own campaign. I think it's on a social channel, which is about, hey, male, it's time to get your own. We have a new leak-proof Pro Tour, it was amazing. But I think, that sort of word and mouth and like where we're going next is very exciting. I'm going to stop there. I think we have a 5-minute Q&A.
Yes.
Yes.
Anthony, right here, right.
Can't see you.
I know, blinded by the lights. Thank you so much. We have time for a couple of questions for Anthony. All right.
This is not product placement, by the way. I'm really thirsty.
I think what's really interesting is you're leaning into the emotional side of it, and I think oftentimes when I think about performance or D2C, it's often math and numbers driven. So how is it that you're able to sell through internally and position it as an emotional awareness channel, rather than be like, well, here's our cost per acquisition, here's how many sales, here's our ROAS, all the less exciting parts of our jobs.
Yeah, I like that you put it that way. I'll start at the end and reverse. Obviously, as business owners, right, and I lead the America's direct-to-consumer business, very dialed on the numbers, right? Look at them every day, and we need to as business leaders. The emotional part was actually extremely easy, and that's because of the way that Stanley's been built, right? Like inside culture and outside. Where it was ingrained from day one, right? My onboarding all the way through, that president often gets up and like, just be yourself, be yourself. So I think that emotional connection starts with our internal culture and then goes external, right? And if you see just how Stanley has progressed from that emotional lens, it feels good, right? Like it feels good to make people happy and excited and things like that. And when we talk about that relationship with the consumer, right, it became bar none, right? If we want to be a premium lifestyle company who really fuels the human experience, like you have to connect emotionally. Otherwise, if you've ever, nobody, should I say this? I'm gonna say nobody who, if you talk to someone with emotionless, I don't know that you're gonna feel a connection to them, right, necessarily, until you get to know them a lot more. And I think that's really important too. But we do track the KPIs, and there's a very exciting or interesting translation between emotion and how those relate to the KPIs that you can kind of reverse engineer.
I'm a mom of a 6th grader and an owner. Oh, I'm Stephanie Desai with June Group, mom of a 6th grader and a 1st grader, and an owner of 4 Stanleys that wouldn't be in my cupboard without last year my 5th grader making me run around town to get the certain color and the certain size where all of his friends had to have them. So I'm just curious, like, where did that last year for us was this viral moment? So was it a certain ad campaign? Like, where did this elementary school sensation originate?
I wish I could stand up here and be like, here's the answer. I think the interesting part for us is when Stanley took off, right, like 2020s, early 2020, it was with moms, right? Like a lot of moms had it, and it became a symbol. And then all of a sudden, seemingly overnight, it was like college kids all over. It was like campuses, and it blew up there. And that was great. It was an organic moment. And there was one December, I remember it clear as day. I was in New York. Somebody's like, oh, my 12-year-old is crazy about you guys. And I was like, they're testing a Stanley. That's our new jug coming out next week. That's so good. Could not have planned this any better. Where was I? And then, so they were like, my 12-year-old. And I was like, in my head, right, I'm not going to say this. I was like, your 12-year-old is acting like a college kid. Very interesting kid. And it did not stop in New York. After, they're like, oh, my kid. And it was, I don't know what happened, right? And when I think about it, like, we've never marketed to kids in this hydration period. We've never like, hey, we're gonna go do that. It's something that happened, I think, by becoming a cultural icon and being at the forefront of culture. And for me, particularly on my personal level, it's been very interesting because when I grew up, right, I would see different older generations wearing certain things, and I'm like, I am not going to wear that, right? Like, not going to go there. There's certain brands, and it's weird because in modern day, it's almost reversed, right? We're seeing New Balance, right? Like, I swore to never wear New Balance when my father-in-law was wearing New Balance, and he was like, these are the most comfortable, and I'm like, not going to lose street cred wearing those. Today, I would wear them, right? And I'm like, I would never tell him that. I'm not going to tell him that and give him that satisfaction. But I think that's kind of how culture is changing. So it's not engineered. It wasn't a campaign. There wasn't a particular moment, but it almost organically happened, right? And what that has now opened the door up is like this next Stanley era, right? We're going obviously into sports and fashion and stuff, and we have people using the product all day, right? Like, we're using a quencher up here, but there's, inside Stanley, and when I look outside, like, people are using different types of things for different pieces of their body, and that kind of category expansion and getting those in front of people are going to be really good. But yeah, it's been great. A lot of parents hate me, but it's been good.
Anthony, thank you so much.
Thank you.